Welcome to Ahead of Their Time, a series where I show you how to create your favorite religions from media and pop culture using the faith creation mechanics in Crusader Kings 3. Today, we'll be creating the pantheon of the 9 divines from the Elder Scrolls series, but first, a little background. The Elder Scrolls world of Tamriel is vast and diverse, with many different religious beliefs among its numerous races. However, these religions are very much different flavors of essentially the same faith, with almost all of them being pantheons filled with deities and spirits that have the same role as corresponding deities in the next race's arrangement of gods. For simplicity's sake, this video will be using lore and references to the Cyrodiilic pantheon of the 8 divines, which include Akatosh, Stendarr, Dibella, and the controversial 9th divine, a human emperor who ascended to godhood through his heroism and became known as Talos. Public temples to the Cyrodiilic pantheon are decentralized across Tamriel and are either devoted to a specific god or contain shrines to all of them. Now we'll move on to which parent religion you should choose as a basis for our Elder Scrolls faith. This time around, the choice is easy. We'll be using Hinduism as the parent religion for the very simple fact that an important tenet we want to use is locked to Hindu faiths. Speaking of which, here are the tenets I suggest. Bhakti. The Cyrodiilic pantheon is a polytheistic religion where many people choose to venerate one god in particular. Shrines and amulets that grant the blessing of one specific divine are common in the games, and Bhakti is the only tenet that allows you to simulate this by picking a patron god and receiving a related benefit. Gnosticism. Just as the pantheon of the divines themselves are very similar across the cultural religions in Tamriel, another recurring figure is that of a trickster god called Lorkhan in the Cyrodiilic faith, who created the material world and creatures that live in it by siphoning the spiritual power of his fellow divines. Some people venerate Lorkhan as the god that all mortals owe their existence to, but many others, especially among the elven races, consider the material world to be a prison, and the separation of their consciousness from the greater spiritual realm to be a terrible fate. Regardless of how individuals see it, there are many references to the spirits of mortals returning to this collective spiritual ether after they die on Earth, or Nirn, and that seems to be pretty close to the general beliefs of the Gnosticism tenet. And for your third option, I once again present 3 tenets that I think are all appropriate, and you can pick whichever one strikes your personal taste or gameplay needs the most. Adaptive. Most people in the Elder Scrolls universe accept that every culture's gods are essentially the same under different names, and the Cyrodiilic Empire manages to generally keep the peace largely because their religion doesn't clash with local practices and cults. Astrology. Celestial bodies in the Elder Scrolls don't exactly work like our planets and stars in real life, but they're still subject to plenty of scrutiny by theologians and scholars alike in the universe of the games. And receiving the blessing of one of the astrological birth signs is actually more powerful in-game than a blessing from a shrine of the divine, since it lasts forever until you change it to something else. Christian syncretism. Not that Christianity has anything to do with the Elder Scrolls universe. I picked this one because it's the only tenet that allows you to make compassionate a virtue in our custom faith, and if the 10 commands of the divines are to be believed, being good to each other is the most important virtue in this faith. And who knows, maybe there's some common ground to be found between Talos and Jesus, both standing at a crossroads between mortality and divinity. And finally, we'll round out the 9 divines' faith by tweaking its doctrines. View on gender, equal. Men and women have access to pretty much all the same opportunities in the Elder Scrolls, and any limitations that do exist are personal and cultural, not dictated by religion. Religious attitude, pluralist. Polytheistic religions are historically very accepting of learning about other people's gods, either as different names for divines they already worship, or as new, intriguing deities to add to the list of people they already pray to. Clerical tradition, theocratic. Temples are always shown to be owned and run by priests. Head of faith, none. The priests themselves care for their own holy sites and temples and help citizens understand the will of the divines. There aren't any archbishops or popes that dictate how believers should act. Marriage type monogamous. In the games that allow the player to marry, the Amulet of Mara is only good for one marriage at a time, and NPCs are only shown to have one official spouse. Unless you want to make your religion more, Dibella focused, in which case go ahead and take polygamy. Divorce disallowed. In Skyrim, you can only get married once without using exploits or mods, but honestly I'd call that more a limitation of gameplay mechanics more than actual law. Go with whatever you want. I just find disallowed divorces to be interesting from a gameplay perspective because almost no other religion I'm aware of has that. Bastardry, legitimization. Emperor Martin Septim was born illegitimate and raised never knowing the truth about his parentage, but he's remembered as a valid, though briefly reigning emperor, and is remembered for generations as one of the greatest members of his line despite his heritage. Consanguinity, close kin taboo. There are plenty of people out there in the wide world of Tamriel. You don't have to diddle your cousin. Same-sex relations, accepted. Marriage isn't limited by gender. Deviancy. Accepted. Doesn't seem like most people in Tamriel care about how you get your rocks off as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Male and female adultery. I say shunned. Marriage is certainly seen as a binding contract, but if you're unmarried, nobody's stopping you from going to the local Temple of Dibella and partaking in some religious instruction. Kinslaying. I was able to find some support to indicate that slaying family is a heavy, heavy taboo in Tamriel. Most importantly, the Daedric prince Mehrunes Dagon is said to have officially become a demon after becoming a kinslayer in the Elsewhere pantheon, so it's definitely seen as a really bad thing. I compromised and went with close kin is criminal. Witchcraft. Accepted. Magic, summoning, and invoking the divine are so common in this world that people barely blink at it. The only witchcraft that's seen as profane is that which harms the living or desecrates the dead. Clerical function, alms, and pacification. Priests in the games generally seem to have the role of maintaining holy places, helping the less fortunate through charity, and keeping everyone in high spirits by telling the stories of the divine's love and heroism. Clerical gender. Either. There are many examples of priests and priestesses working side by side as equals. Clerical marriage. Allowed. Some priests in the game have spouses. Clerical appointment. It doesn't seem like secular rulership and priesthood really clash at all. Each side basically keeps to itself. I went with spiritual for life to represent the independence of the temples and their clergy. And that's it for the Temple of the Nine Divines. Fill in the flavor text and try to find a symbol you're happy with. If you're like me and aren't a fan of the rather anemic selection of symbols in the vanilla game, you might consider downloading the More Faith Icons mod, which has like 5 times more symbols than vanilla, and will undoubtedly have more added over time. Link in the description if you're interested. And one more thing. If you're interested in flavoring your religion to be more focused on a specific divine, you can switch around the tenets to take the emphasis off the general beliefs of Cyrodiilic polytheism and more about the teachings of the individual gods. Keep Gnosticism because it applies to the mechanics of life and death in general in this world, and replace the other two with tenets that are more associated with your favored divine, such as carnal exaltation and polyamory for a Dibella faith, or sanctity of nature for a Kinnereth one. So how does it play? Well, if nothing else, you're tolerant. The pluralist doctrine in combination with Gnosticism and either adaptive or Christian syncretism means you should be able to find, if not allies, then at least neighbors you have some common ground with who won't always see you as a disgusting heretic. You can also rule a large and multi-religious empire without necessarily needing to convert all of them to your faith, since religious dissidents are less likely to rise up against you because of how accepting you are. Bhakti allows each of your rulers to pick a bonus that applies to their personality and needs, making your characters able to specialize themselves more than most other faiths. When it comes time to expand violently or defend yourself against invaders, though, you might find your faith to be relatively toothless compared to some others, with no religious head to rally behind for a great holy war or any tenets that offer combat bonuses aside from taking a blessing from Kali. Talos. Thanks for watching this attempt at creating the Nine Divines faith in CK3. Let me know if there are any fictional or satirical religions you want to see me cover next, and I'll add them to the ever-expanding list. Check out the description to vote for the next faith you want me to cover, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, there once was a hero named Ragnar the Red, who came riding to Whiterun from old Rorikstead. And the braggart did swagger and brandish his blade as he told of bold battles and gold he had made. But then he went quiet, did Ragnar the Red, when he met the shield maiden Matilda, who said,